And we are back, and we just finished what possibly will get Angelina Jolie an Oscar nom, the film Maria from 2024, rated R, with a runtime of 2 hours and 4 minutes. This is currently streaming on Netflix and comes to us from director Pablo Larraín, based off I guess it's sort of like a condensed version. Well, it's the last week of Callas's life. This is based on who was probably one of the world's greatest opera singers, Maria Callas, and in the last week of her life. But before we start, I also want to say hello to my good friend Angie, who is here to talk to us about this film as well. I think one of my big takeaways about this film was how, well, we'll get into it, but just the fact that she sort of created this little family at the end that was with her. And I don't know Angie very long, but she has become one of my favorite humans and a very, very dear friend. And I just absolutely adore Angie. So again, welcome Angie from the great state of Missouri.
Thank you so much.
Where all the good barbecue really comes from, let's be honest.
Absolutely. In all competitions, we will win. But
exactly. Everybody else is like an old woman coming out of a pool next to Missouri barbecue.
And our barbecue popcorn. We can't forget to mention.
Yes.
By meat. Amazing.
Mitchie's. So, Shout out to Mitchie's.
So thank you. It's a privilege to join you all. I really can't believe you invited me to join in your movie review process, but I'm humbled and excited to be a part of it.
Oh, we're so excited to have you. Our first guest of the year.
Yep.
So let's get into it. So again, we were talking about how the film is about the last week of Maria Callas's life. She is completely alone. I guess not destitute, because I don't think a destitute person would live in that apartment. She has servants, I guess, a butler.
She looks loaded.
Yeah. But it's just incredibly sad. I didn't hate the film, but for someone who was sort of this larger than life figure in the world of opera, again, considered maybe one of the greatest singers of all time in that specific space, to kind of focus on this part of her life was kind of strange to me. It felt very strange. But a couple of my takeaways was how incredibly sad everything was in her life at the end. Here she was adored by a global audience, revered, emulated, sought after, and then towards the end of her life, she was sort of like cast aside and forgotten in a way.
Well, because she pulled herself away, because she did not have that ability anymore.
Fair enough, but I still feel like certain people, even when they step away, they still, I don't want to say have that idolization or idolatry, but like they can still command.
You also have to consider the genre that she worked in.
I guess,
it's opera. You're not going to see throngs of screaming people tearing their clothes off and throwing their underwear on stage at Carnegie Hall. It's a different kind of fan.
I guess you're right. Angie, before this film, I'm sure you'd heard about Callas, but did you know anything about her, I guess, personal life?
The only thing that I was aware of was, one, her incredible fashion sense and just being known in that time at the 50s, 60s. My grandmother actually dressed very much like her. So that was fun to reminisce about some of the fashion trends. And however, for her life, no, I did not know I didn't know the latter part of her life. After 20 years of a career, her vocals going so poorly on her that she couldn't rely on them anymore. And I tried to understand a little bit about how that can happen. And I studied just a tiny bit to learn that maybe even her style and soprano coach might have actually allowed her to push too far, those high notes and low notes during performances. So I thought it was really fascinating to hear even what might have led to her early vocal problems, also her health problems and all those things. I didn't know that part, but I certainly knew of her fame and maybe the greatest of all time level opera performer.
I didn't know she was initially married to somebody else. I did know about her kind of hooking up with Onassis for so many years. And for some reason, I thought that they were married, but apparently they weren't. And then he kind of goes off with Jackie Kennedy, which was pretty outrageous. So I didn't know that about her. I had a friend many years ago when I was young and single and had a lot of disposable income where we would go to the opera like once a month. I think I told you about my friend Jerry, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So we used to go to the opera once a month. And it's just interesting because a lot of the operas that she sang endure. And for the most part, opera is it's sad. It's incredibly sad. Somebody's always dying or getting tuberculosis and
entire
dying.
Families are dying.
Yes. Or somebody like in Madame Butterfly is committing suicide.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting to see art imitating life and life imitating art because, again, she's this opera diva in this time where she's absolutely revered. In that sequence where she's in that party where she meets Onassis for the first time, that party is actually being given for her to celebrate her. So she is not without this complete adoration from people, which must also be weird coming from where she came from. Again, I want to say I didn't hate the film, but I would have liked them to maybe focus a little bit more on her past because the sequences with the mother and the sister that you see in the past. So everything in the past is black and white. So I guess that's the marker. Everything that's in the past is black and white. There were some scenes with the mother and the sister that I also did like a quick deep dive on this. And I really got a lot of what I know from Angelina Jolie and Cynthia Erivo's Variety Actor on Actor chat, which I thought was really interesting because she mentions how the mother just was an awful human being. And you sort of see it in the film, but not too much. And they're not said, but you can sort of take away that during the war, I guess her mother sold her and her sister into prostitution, which is just awful. And so that really hurt my heart. But I was also really interested in that because that actually has to be a very defining moment in a young woman's life to go through that horrible assault and then at the hands because of her mother, right?
Yeah.
So I would have liked them to explore some of that because I think that would have kind of made a better case for how her life sort of turned out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, that's some serious trauma.
Big time.
And
Big time.
To sort of like glancingly touch on it in just like this brief interlude in the movie, a bit of memory, and not really address it more towards the end or have it be more relevant towards the end. It's just sort of like, okay, this happened in their life.
Yeah.
But the real issue is I can't sing like I used to.
Right. And that's the big
That's the big crux of the story. It's that
she is not who she used to be.
She is basically living in the shadow of herself. And it's a pretty miserable existence because you're never going to reach that height again. And deep down you know it, but yet you're still maintaining this like facade out in public of I'll sing when I'm ready to sing.
Right.
Which is something I believe she actually tells her documentarian, Mr. What was his name? Mandrax.
Yeah.
Which apparently is just European Quaaludes.
I feel like they attempted to touch on the sisters' relationships in that quick luncheon that they have. The elder sister mentions that she tried to give her a break every once in a while.
It was funny. I said that. Yeah, that scene wrecked me. Like I expected to cry more. I didn't. I did get misty. So that scene is very powerful because it kind of tells you what happened in the past and how the sister kept saying, you can't blame yourself, be kind to yourself. And you see, I was saying before how I mean, Angelina Jolie is devastating in this. I mean, I don't think it's funny when you see something with someone, it's like, I don't think I could see anyone else play this but her.
Agree.
And there's something very sad in Angelina Jolie's eyes that sort of permeates through the film. And to your point, she's very, very skinny. I think I've seen her healthier in past years, but she is very, very slim in this. I'm not saying unhealthy, but and I think that also...
Was that, I'm no Maria Callas expert, was that fitting with the character? Did she lose a lot of weight?
She did lose a lot of weight, but she didn't lose like that. You weren't seeing bones
and sinew
and stuff. Yeah.
I think she, at a young age, they said she was near to 200 pounds. And then she had this significant weight loss. But like you shared, she still looked like
A regular
healthy.
person. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the 50s. It wasn't like heroin chic wasn't a thing.
And she even talks about in a couple documentaries that are little quick clips that I saw about the weight that she was carrying was exhausting her as a singer, and that actually losing the weight gave her a feeling of lightness that she really needed. But one critic actually said that in her early career, her voice sounded bright. She had a brightness to it, along with all of her technical excellence. But that as her career evolved over the next 20 years, that then that brightness diminished. And I feel like that's kind of what you're saying about Angelina Jolie's eyes as well. And I think that is by design, possibly really a very well done piece of what it sounded like people interpreted later in her talent, that it was just a little bit that she was missing a lightheartedness or a brightness to her voice that she never got back. No matter how hard she tried, which I know had helped all the reasons that we've heard, but in asking her about it, she did not connect it to the weight loss that she experienced in the 50s.
Yeah, that's interesting because also I feel like Angelina Jolie is somebody that lives very much under the microscope. So for her to take on this persona of this woman who was also revered, but then sort of cast aside later in her career. I mean, not that this is the end of Angelina Jolie's career by any way, shape, or form, but she's the actress Angelina Jolie is also someone who has been very much scrutinized in the press and through media and talking heads and whatever. So I think that she probably had a lot of affinity for that and just a lot of compassion and kindness, because something that you said earlier today, which I think was very much like, I didn't see it at first, but you said, I think she's ready to die.
Of Callas.
Callas, sorry. Yeah. We're jumping back to Callas, not Angelina Jolie. Sorry, folks. Yes, Callas. You said about Callas that she seems like she's ready to die.
Yes, yeah. Make sure you specify. Like looking at Angelina Jolie.
I know,
she's done.
Yeah, we're gonna start a new internet rumor.
She's done. Put her on your Deadpool, folks. She ain't seeing 2026.
So I want to also talk about a couple of things. So this movie made me incredibly sad. I felt like it was very melancholy. I wish the director had focused on a little bit more of her past to sort of explain how the past impacted her later story, her later trajectory. But there were some really beautiful parts of this, some very moving parts. And I think one of them is Ferruccio and Bruna, the people that work with her. So Ferruccio was, I guess, her butler / driver, and Bruna was her housekeeper. And these people are absolutely devoted to her. She is not the star that she used to be. However, these two people have basically become her family. And much like family, there's a very contentious relationship, especially with Ferruccio, right? When she's angry with him, she expects him to move the piano and just break his back.
Yeah.
And then when she's okay with him, she's kinder and she says,
"You did a great job moving that piano."
Right. It's in the right place. Right. So even if he didn't move it.
She'll never say, "Thank you, Ferruccio." It's always, the piano looks good where it is now.
It's funny. You had said that after we watched it, and it was kind of funny because we recently saw Trading Places, which had a lot of rich people. Well, not a lot, but there's a couple of characters who are rich, who are very dismissive of their household staff.
Oh, it's turned up to 90 in Trading Places. Yeah, like they won't even make eye contact.
So is that like a rich people thing? I don't know.
I guess so. You got to maintain those levels. Yeah, don't look at the staff. You don't want them thinking that they could ask you for something. Your friend.
So going back to Angie, let's talk about, I guess, Ferruccio and Bruna. What did you think of those two characters?
Like you, I thought they were fearlessly devoted to her and endlessly devoted to her, willing to do anything she requested. I think they were both extremely worried about her well-being and trying really hard to keep it together. And the scene where they're playing cards, I thought that was really sweet and loving. And I think, Ray, that's when she might have been communicating to them that she was ready to go, because she was sort of making plans for them when she wasn't going to be there. So I thought that was just the sweetest. And I think for the opening scene where she's singing as she's being made an omelet and she's given such a rave review, that is something that haunted me from that movie, actually still does, when I think of it. Sounded beautiful to me, but I don't have an opera trained ear. So I'm curious if you all observed what you noticed about that. Was that by design, that each time she was using her voice, either at home or on the stage when trying to get everything back to the way it used to be, it always sounded beautiful to me, like perfect. And I think, is that a directorial, is that part of, by design, it was to be like that? And we were left to not hear the imperfections. Yeah. Or is my ear untrained and I don't know how to listen to opera?
No, you know what? I think that's a great observation, because I think in the beginning, so my interpretation of that is because you hear her from the past as well. And there are parts where she's lip sync because they're piping in the real Callas, right? So in those sequences when Angelina Jolie is singing as Maria Callas, it is beautiful because she did train for months. However, it's not as perfect as Callas in her heyday. So I think that's the thing, right? Because like you, I'm more about the experience. I don't want to nitpick. I want to sit in a story and enjoy it. And same thing with music. I'm not trying to find the faults. I'm trying to experience it to the point where I know that we all live on our phones now. But the last time you and I went to a live show, I think I took 2 pictures and then I put my phone away because I was like, I want to be present in this moment. This event's going to happen today. It's not going to repeat. And I want to live in this moment. And maybe I'll regret that I didn't film a particular song, but I just want to live in this moment and carry this memory. So I think to that extent, because again, art is subjective, right? It's what the audience brings to it. And I think that whenever Bruna tells Maria, "Madam, that was magnificent," it was more because of love, because she loved this woman. There's a scene closer to the end of the story. I think it was like around the time where they have that fracas with the French journalist. And she says, "Madam, come home. Love is home." And that line spoke to me because I feel like in this journey, we all are on a journey. And I think that some people have more spectacular journeys than others. Some other people have maybe more quieter journeys. So for somebody like Maria Callas, who's in the public eye, who's being adored globally, that's got to be gratifying, to come from nothing, to become this megastar, to be adored and worshipped, to be sought after, to be chased. Her situation with Aristotle, she's desired, she's coveted. She belongs to somebody else. She's somebody else's wife, but this man is just like, you're going to be mine. And so to that extent, I think that it's interesting because it felt like, at least to me, again, it felt like the story was, here's a woman who had everything, who was adored and loved, and then sort of was forgotten and cast aside because she wasn't who she had been. And it's unfortunate because she still was a woman that deserved love and respect. But the only people that really loved and respect her were probably Bruna and, what's his name again? Ferruccio, mm-hmm. Right. So, yeah, it's kind of an interesting movie because it's like you're dealing with mortality. You're dealing with sort of being towards the end, and it's scary because you don't know what you're going into. You're going into the unknown, but wait a minute.
Like I said, I think, or as you mentioned before, my impression was that she was waiting to die. And as far as, she does have this little unit at her house of 2 people that genuinely care for her, mm-hmm. Maria. I don't feel like she was cast aside. I think there were plenty of people who were still in love with La Cala, or whatever
possibly,
the nickname was.
But it was very superficial. No one really knew her.
No. Nobody knows a celebrity. Don't act like.
No. No, but even like
people love celebrities for superficial reasons, and especially singers. They don't know anything about the singer. They know about the icon, the idol, the unattainable thing. In a lot of ways, she or at least from the impression I get from the story, that's what she became. She became the idol, the unattainable thing, the what was it, uncaged tiger, yada yada, whatever she said. That's one of the issues I had with the movie, was just the writing and the dialogue. There was several moments where she's talking like a supervillain from a comic book. And that's because that's what she wants. She wants that back. It's the singing voice. Obviously, she wants the singing voice. That's the source of her power. Mm-hmm. And she realizes it's gone. But she's still in this idol mode all the time. Mm-hmm. When she's just talking to regular people, even when she's talking to Ferruccio. Did I say it
I think
right?
that's right. Yeah.
Probably the only one she doesn't or at least I didn't notice her exhibiting that, was with the cook.
Bruna.
Yeah. I don't know why, but that relationship seemed a little bit less, you do what I say, and that's it. Like, she actually asked her opinion. She didn't ask Ferruccio what he thought of her singing.
Mm.
I did notice that Ferruccio would share his opinions or guidance, and Bruna, even when she wasn't eating, I think she only said that to Ferruccio. I don't think she ever said it to Maria that she needed to eat more. I feel like...
Yeah, there was that scene where she's talking to Ferruccio and she's being a little bit more candid with him, and I think that's another reason why, because she's like the family, she's part of the family that's been created here. She would never intentionally hurt Maria. Yeah, so that's why even in that, towards the end, where kind of going back to Angie's point about how you hear the stuff in the past and that's like gold label Callas singing, right? And then you compare it to the singing today. It's not the people that get booed off American Idol, but it's still not as top tier as she had been. So, and to somebody like her, that must be devastating, right? I can't sing. I can't.
For her, it was everything. I said, it was the source of her power. It was the source of everything that made her what she was. And now she is pretty much just, it's like she's faking it. I'm still the diva. I will sing when I feel like I want to sing. Mm-hmm. As far as like the difference between the sounding and the voice, in that scene when she goes to the cook's name again? Bruna. When she goes to Bruna and asks what she thinks, I don't know squat about opera. I'm like, oh, that sounded pretty good. Maybe this film's about Callas's amazing comeback. No. But from what I've read, the way while I'm listening to it, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good. And I'm like, I noticed certain bits are a little bit rougher. And from what I read, what they did was they had Callas, obviously all the recordings of her, and Jolie spent 7 months or 8 months training. Yeah. They sort of like, in the old stuff, like the stuff that was black and white, that was pure Callas. The stuff in the modern day, the color footage, that was like a mix. Which was like 90% or 97% Callas and like 3%
is that right?
Angelina Jolie's actual singing.
I thought it was like maybe more. I thought it was like more like 60-40. Oh, that's interesting.
They added it in very subtly so that you could tell there's a difference, but it's still, for me, that sounds good.
Great, yeah. I don't sound like that in the shower.
Like I said, I'm the opera king, so yeah.
I agree with you about the sort of her personal devastation about the singing. However, I think another key component to the Callas story is Aristotle Onassis.
Yes.
Angie, what did you think? What did you think about that relationship? And do you think that was, I don't want to say real, but I guess in a way, because a lot of people in the public eye have to put on a persona. So she's the La Callas, this diva, but probably internally she's still Maria, young girl, heavyset, in that room singing with her sister, being eyed by these, I guess, German soldiers. So what were your thoughts about like her relationship with Aristotle?
So that was where I did do a tiny bit of research as well, because I was really curious what happened to her existing husband after. And so I guess they were married about 10 years. And according to some history, it said that he did possibly steal from her, the husband. So maybe things weren't as depicted in the movie as she was the main source of the change. But what I thought was the most fascinating, and Ray, this could align to your scripting part, was the kind of the storyline about going to Aristotle Onassis yacht and seeing the Greek god or whatever the figure was that he needed to show her, the sculpture, and then her having those in larger form sitting around her everyday dressing room.
Yeah.
Like as artifacts of a time long past, and also almost like a graveyard of them, in my opinion, was sort of sad. And so it did appear, just based on the movie's depiction, that it was her one true love. Then they threw in little quick things like the storyline behind the going to the yacht to see the sculpture, and then also Jackie Kennedy being invited to do something similar, and that kind of interweaved in there. So in a way, it felt, I don't know, this is the wrong term, this diminishes it, but the scripting might have been a little bit too fed, maybe, or made for TV movie type thing, where, because it felt like, could that really have, was that his shtick, his line? He took women to his yacht to show them his ancient artifacts? I don't know, but it just felt like forced a bit. And then they quickly made a mention of her not being able to carry a child. And I thought, gosh, that would have been, and that was a fast mention. So anyway, not to totally spoil the movie with things and
I feel like you're not really spoiling it, because
I
mean, you can find out about Callas's life. So yeah.
So that, I think for me, it was fascinating that, and they almost imply that he selected Jackie Kennedy over her a little. And I don't know if that was real or not, but it felt like she came off as such a strong-minded woman that I found it almost impossible that there wasn't some part of her that did not select him, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think so my first impressions was she has daddy issues, because she's definitely dating these men or marrying these men that are way older than her. Like her first husband looked like her grandpa.
He looked like Mickey Rooney. Like old Mickey Rooney.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And then, Aristotle's got a ton of cash. So, but I guess, because she sort of alludes to it in the script too. She says, I found out today that Frank Sinatra makes like 15 times more than what I make. And she's almost indignant about it, right? Because she's not that Old Blue Eyes wasn't a good singer representing NJ, but she was like global. I mean, not that he wasn't, but she was.
It's a different genre of music. Popular music is always going to blow out. Nobody's going to become a bajillionaire playing saxophone in the symphony orchestra. It's just no.
And then the other thing was the sequence towards the end of Aristotle's life when she comes to see him. It was interesting because the first thing out of his mouth to her is, I love you, which I thought was, I was like, okay, where's this going? I was like, when I first saw that, I was like, does he know that that's Maria and not Jackie? But obviously he did. And they have that conversation. And then I guess he's aware that he's slipping away. And he tells her that thing about how he's going to get a chair and he's going to watch the boats, and there's going to be a chair for her to join him at whatever point she wants to join him. So I guess in that way, he was telling her that she was also like the greatest love of his life. But then again, like, okay, so then why did you marry Jackie? Was she just supposed to be like a statement wife or like a trophy wife? Was it for show? Because apparently he's still in communications with Maria.
I thought the scene with then, I don't know, would he have been President Kennedy at the time?
Yes.
From the restaurant?
That was
excellent. That was a fascinating scene.
Yes, that was excellent. That was excellent too. I really liked that scene a lot. And that was also very telling, because it was almost like, it looked like Kennedy was trying to bed Maria. And she basically was like, listen, just because our spouses are cheating doesn't mean that you and I are going to hook up. And she just walks away, just head held high and very classy. Yeah. It was a really melancholy film. I think I would have liked to have seen more about how she got to where she became like this big diva. And maybe they could have ended, I don't know, sort of like an Amadeus Salieri kind of wraps up the whole story. But
well, I mean, you don't really do it like that, because that's more, there was a fake rivalry there that fueled that whole movie.
No, but just the way
made
how
it like so powerful.
Yes, no, but in this case, maybe it could have been told like that, where you focus more on past Callas instead of present day Callas, because by then she's a shell of who she was.
Yeah.
And it was sad. And then we just watched a movie, I don't want to give it away, where what you see isn't really what's happening. And that sort of happens here with the Mandrake's character played by Cody Smith McPhee. And that was kind of interesting because originally I thought that was happening, but he's just somebody in her head. He doesn't exist.
I picked that up like right because I mean it's strange that the documentarian is the same name as the drug that she's
taking. Yeah.
And then when I looked up what the drug was, I was like, okay, yeah.
It's like a hallucinogen.
It's Quaaludes.
Oh, it's Quaaludes. Oh,
it's literally Quaaludes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that was also kind of interesting how this because he's sort of not exposition guy, but he facilitates exposition by speaking about certain things and bringing certain things up. And then she sort of, like, he says to her, why did you go to Aristotle? And she's like, because he asked me to, which led me to believe that she still didn't matter. She still loved Aristotle. And he's like, oh, but did you see Jackie? And she was like, no, I went out the back door because even though he was married to Jackie, I was still the secret. So I'm assuming he was still stepping out at Aristotle, even though he was married to Jackie. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
Rich guy, trophy wife. He's probably got like 6 or 7 girls on the side.
At least, if not more. Yeah. From the perspective of women, Angie, I know that we've talked a lot on the podcast about, and this is terrible, but we always talk about like how certain female actresses butcher their faces and do things to their faces. The industry isn't kind. And I think in a lot of respect, because Callas got older and her gift lessened, she was also kind of tossed aside. Let's talk about getting older in the space and how that changes, because obviously 20-year-old me could get free drinks at the bar easily as opposed to 52-year-old me, which I'm sure somebody would be looking at me like, Grandma, what are you doing at this bar? I guess my question is, I'm going to ask Angie first and then I'll ask you, why is this goddamn world not nice to women?
Well, the scene where she has her kind of home team go with her out that evening because she's expected somewhere or going to be adored somewhere reminded me of that feeling you just talked about, like that she could walk into a room and command attention and have anything she'd like for the evening. If she wanted drinks with this person or another person, she got to call all the shots. So I thought that was a really fascinating scene, her taking them out for a bit for socializing, and she was in her pajamas underneath it all.
Yes.
And they were still going to go along with her to do that thing. So I thought it was really gracious that they understood that she might have been just reminiscing about a time when everything came easier and was far more graceful for her. But I think it's the same. I think that's why the movie is such a tragedy, because I do think she could have had a completely different next chapters had she been able to let go of perfectionism and that one craft, which albeit exceptional on all levels, but that would be the thing that would bring her down possibly, and I think probably ruin the final years of her life, because she was so busy trying to be perfect, like you said, and win back or get back to the time that all of it was much easier for her. So I think that's kind of a human experience, maybe, and even beyond a female experience, with the exception that in an industry where, well, I think, actually, I don't even know, in opera, I do think there are a few male opera singers that probably continue to maintain their stature and social hierarchy and strength even after. She was 53. I mean, that was so young.
Right, to die. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. For me, I think it's a human experience, but then I would also add the pressures that anyone has in an industry where your physical looks require so much. I find it cringeworthy sometimes to see all of the beautiful faces that are morphed by trying to turn back time. Anyway.
I agree. I think it's definitely one of my pet peeves. And it's to this day, because, I mean, we won't mention names, but you see other actresses who don't go down that route. And there's something really beautiful about, I don't know, to me at least, maybe I'm crazy, but I love the idea of lines on a face.
Mm-hmm.
I really love the idea of lines on a face. Like, we recently saw Heretic.
Yeah.
And Hugh Grant is not as young as he used to be. He's an older guy now. And his face is wonderful. It's lived in, it's comfortable. I know it. I'm like, hey, you're the guy that did 4 Weddings and a Funeral. But he's not that in that film. But it's interesting because he's given the luxury of aging, because I guess he's a man and I guess men age better. I don't know. That's not entirely true. I feel like
I think it's just like traditionally growing up for this isn't even just us. This is going back centuries. It's just
the beauty
women.
ideal.
Women were valued for their beauty, their physical beauty. Men were valued for the things that they did. I'm the great adventurer. I'm the brilliant scientist. I'm the amazing athlete. As you get older, for a man, it's like, oh, this is like, I'm wearing my experiences on my face now. Whereas for a woman, when viewed through this traditional lens, it's just sort of like the beauty's gone. There's no proof that you were ever beautiful because it's just gone. It's not on your face anymore. Whereas the man's proof is his face. Now he's rugged or grizzled or whatever term you want to use for an older dude with lines on his face.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas you look at a woman and she's just haggard or battered or whatever term you want to use for a woman having lines on her face.
Definitely the adjectives are definitely harsher.
Absolutely. You never refer to a dude as, oh, he looks like an old hag. No.
Right. That's for the women.
That's saved for the ladies.
Yeah.
I do feel that, it's proven that industry, the entertainment industry especially, is going to pressure these people to be like, you ain't get the young ingenue role anymore.
Right.
How about playing her grandmother?
Yeah.
Grandmother? Okay, what if I just tightened my face a couple of inches? All right, let's see what we get.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't turn out very well.
No, I mean, listen, I get why the older actresses do it, but my other big pet peeve is the younger
actress.
ones.
Yeah.
Like,
let's not
even mention it. Yeah,
but I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
NC.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, she's like the most egregious example. I'll tell you offline, Angie. But I just watching this film, like, I felt nothing but sadness, to be honest. And I would have liked to, like, even in the triumphant moments of Callas at Scala doing operas, whether it was Puccini or Verdi or whatever, it still felt like in a time long past. And I guess filming those parts in black and white didn't help my consumption of it, because even the black and white, like, in my brain, I was like, oh, that's old. That stuff is old. That's in the past. So already the color stuff is what's happening now, the stuff that's happening in the 70s. And even though it's in color, the tone of the story is just very depressing. Here's a woman who is medicating to sort of live another day, but also not, because I also feel like what you said, she very much had this air of, if I died today, no big deal, which is a weird kind of sentiment. And especially since maybe she felt alone in the world. I mean, she had a sister, but I guess they weren't close, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. She had these 2 people, but still they were her staff. They weren't family. Maybe they viewed her more favorably than she viewed them. I don't know, because she would still get ornery with them and punish them, or the butler more than anybody, right? Yeah. But they seemed more loving of her. And I wonder, what do you think? Do you think that Callas had any empathy and compassion and love for herself?
No.
Because
I think when she knew that she no longer had that ability, that's like a level of mourning that she could not overcome. The death of her talent, or in her eyes, the death of her talent, because as to the layman, you and me, we're listening to her singing in the kitchen and we're like, hey,
that's pretty damn good.
I couldn't do that. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
But for her, it was, this is crap. This is terrible. This is not what Callas could do. This is not what people came to see. This is I was a god, and now that god is dead.
Yeah.
And I don't think that she was ever able to recover from it. And maybe when the reporter said that was just sort of like the death knell, because everybody else is complimentary. Oh, I could hear it a little bit in there. I could hear it a little. There's hope. There's some hope. But then when somebody who has absolutely no reason to be polite, to be kind, no ulterior motive, no friendship, no love. It's sort of like there is the knife of truth just stabbing me in the back, and that's it. Screw this world. I can never be this. I'll never get over this. I'm done. Good night.
Yeah. Yeah. That ending was rough to watch. Or that scene was really rough to watch because, to your point, that French journalist was kind of a jerk. And I mean, I'm sure he's packaging it as I'm a reporter and I'm just here to get the truth out to the people. But
I mean, like even today, we've seen artists that are shadows of themselves. But you would never go up to them and be like, "Hey, man, what the hell happened at that last show? That just sucked.
Terrible. Sucked.
Yeah, man." No, you would be like, "Oh my God, that was so great." They know they know.
Or I still play your albums from 20 years ago.
I'm sure we are all our own worst critic.
Fair.
And some people are able to just live with that. I mean, okay, I could have done that better. Some people, it's like, I should have done that better. I hate myself.
So she was probably the second.
She was the second one.
Yeah.
She did not want to go on if she could not reach that level, because you got the entire world basically saying you are a living legend.
Yeah.
And she could maintain that status so long as she just never does it again. But she wants to do it again. She wishes she could do it again, but she never will. She just does not have the physicality to muster that anymore.
Yeah.
So that is dead. And if that's dead, what is the point of going on?
Wow.
I'm just going through life now.
Right. Right.
Eat food, go to the bathroom, and sleep.
And take my pills to numb.
Yeah.
That's sad. What do you think, Angie? Do you think she had any kind of kindness or love or compassion for herself?
I don't think so either. I think she was trying in the interviews with her documentarian. I think she was trying to find love in the spaces where she didn't feel any, maybe just by retelling the story the way she wanted it to be told, or trying to find a little bit of loving grace for someone that missed out on important, possibly opportunities for the life that she led instead. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Judy, the Judy Garland story with Renee Zellweger, a little bit, in that it's so painful to watch, but then you just also know how much beauty they gave the world and how their talent made a big difference. And in an interview from one of the link I sent you today, it was talking about near the end in an interview with Maria, what did she want to be known for? And she said, after stumbling over her words, and she said, I'm not really good with words, but in the end, I just want it to go on. I want people to carry on, and to maybe implied is that they learn more about opera and carry on from all of the work and hard grit that she dedicated to it, that someone will carry it on and continue to grow in opera. She didn't say that last part, but rather just that it was really important for her, for others to carry it on. So maybe her way of expressing love to herself and to others was just to acknowledge that it made a difference, and there would be a way for people to learn and grow from it, but not herself, which was the sad part to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So sad.
But that would have been fun to have in the movie, a little bit of that, like just see a little bit more about, like you shared, what was the journey that brought her here? What were the things that were so important for her beyond the perfection of her voice and her craft and her acting? I mean, she was known for so much more than an operatic voice, also her acting capability and her emotion that she brought to it, everything. Yeah. And so anyway, I just think it just felt like maybe in some of the other interviews that she'd conducted, she had given little glimpses of what she hoped that would be her legacy.
I mean, it's interesting. She's been dead almost 50 years. Wow. She died at 77. So, but her legacy endures. I mean, you can go on YouTube and you can find clips of her in her heyday. You can listen to her in interviews with journalists and maybe talk show hosts talking about like her life experiences and stuff. And I guess being the consummate performer, she doesn't break down. She's always smiling and stuff. But it's interesting because she's definitely a broken person, at least in this last week of her life. And it was just very sad because it was like, I just would have liked there to be more of the good stuff. And I mean, life is messy and life isn't perfect. But I think that for someone like this, it would have been nice to have seen sort of like the trajectory that led her to here a little bit more. And we could still focus on the end where things get gray and harsh and very unforgiving. But it just would have been nicer to have seen a little bit more of her in her heyday. It's interesting. You mentioned after we watched it, I didn't notice the stuff about the dialogue, but once you said it, I was sort of like, they could have done with like maybe another draft of this, right?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of like fits, I guess, with the character. She's the diva, but a bunch of it came off as clunky, and it also it makes it harder to care about the character when the character is kind of playing another character. I don't know if I'm saying that properly, but it's sort of she's putting on these airs that makes it so that I'm not making that connection there, and as a result, I'm not really caring about this movie, and I'm sort of losing interest.
Well, you said something interesting because you basically said she's the main character, but she's not likable.
No, not at all.
You know, it's interesting because the interview that you mentioned, the Variety interview, she was talking about how difficult it was to be, as an actor, to play an actor, which I thought was interesting. So maybe that's what Ray was picking up on as well, that it really felt like acting in the third person or something, like she wasn't able to get within her. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
and it's also you're channeling somebody who's this is kind of, I guess, Angelina Jolie's interpretation, because it's not like she can consult Maria Callas because Maria Callas isn't there. I mean, she could look at old videos and stuff, but she still doesn't really understand her headspace. And from what we see here in the last week of her life, she's heavily medicated to the point where she's seeing somebody who's not technically there. And it feels like maybe that's one of her most honest relationships, right? With the Mandrix character, because she's having these conversations and I feel like she's being more honest. Like even with Ferruccio and Bruna, and Bruna, it felt like she was guarded at all times.
She's playing that character. She never turns it off. She was always playing that diva character. And she's honest with Mandrax to a point, because in that bit of dialogue I keep bringing up over and over, he's like, just sing. They're the scene where they're in front of that building and it's raining, and she says, I will sing when I want to sing. Right. And that's bullcrap. That's her excuse. That's what she tells people. She's not going to sing ever because she doesn't believe that she can anymore.
Well, I think she's hoping she can.
I think she may be hoping because other people, you did magnificent, even though she's got that. She clearly doesn't believe Bruna.
Yeah. Is that why she got the tape recorder?
There's the tape recorder, yeah.
She got him to get the tape recorder for her.
But even there, she's lying to Mandrax about why she's not singing. She's not singing because she doesn't have that confidence anymore. The confidence that she's showing, my chin up, wearing my sunglasses and my hat and all that, looking all coiffed and perfect. Like I said, the goddess.
Mm-hmm.
It's
a front. Fair, but she never doesn't look put together. Even when she's waking up, I'm like,
that's what I mean.
I don't look like that.
That's what I mean. Up. She doesn't turn it
off. There's
a
lot going on before this even looks halfway human.
She doesn't turn it off. It's like I'm on at all times, even in front of my staff who love me.
Right.
Like this is about as close to a family as I get.
She's gonna get, yeah.
We're family. We walking around in our underwear, burping. We don't care. I'm not in a tuxedo right now.
I told Angie what you got all dressed up for today.
Yeah, got my pomade full hair, tuxedo,
smoking jacket,
Yeah, I'm wearing it all. every fancy garment you could imagine, I have it on. No, when you're hanging around the people you love, you're able to relax. She was just, it was like, all right, I got to get ready for the stage. No, you're having an omelet. Calm down.
Yeah.
I think the one conversation she had that wasn't about her was during the card game. I think that was it. That was probably the most human I presented herself, at least through the movie.
That's true too. What about when she's with Aristotle for the last time? What did you think of that scene?
I really struggled with that relationship dynamic because it didn't make a lot of sense to me. I still felt like she might have been part of the reason they weren't together. Because at one point someone mentioned that he didn't want her to sing, or asked her not to sing. And then in that moment, the thing that I did like at the bedside was him saying, I shouldn't have told you not to sing.
Right.
If that was true, I just don't know. It seems odd that you would have told the greatest opera singer in the world to no longer sing.
Yeah. So you know what? Thanks for bringing that up, because I want to tie that to a different conversation that happens in the past. And you and I briefly talked about it before, but the conversation was when that fan comes to Callas and says to her, oh, I heard you sing. I would love to hear you sing in like Athens in the Parthenon or whatever, because I hear the acoustics are so great. And then at one point she turns to Aristotle and she's like, I'm sorry, who are you? And he's indignant. And he says to Callas, he doesn't even talk to the woman. He says to Callas, tell her that I'm the fucking richest man in this room or something. And then he storms away. And I wondered, because I feel like in that generation, right, that must have been like the 50s, maybe early 60s, there was a lot of machismo. There's a lot of men being men, and to be overshadowed by your partner. Maybe he would have been jealous if she had continued her career. So he was trying to dissuade her from being this revered, worshipped woman, because that took away from his time with her, because he just wanted her for himself. He was an acquirer of beauty and art and all this other stuff. So sometimes I wondered if he genuinely loved her, if she was just another notch on his belt. Like, here, I've acquired the diva.
You know what? By telling her not to sing, he possesses it. It belongs to him.
Right?
Only me. Nobody else could hear you sing.
Nobody else can hear you sing but me.
It belongs to me.
And I think that for the most part, she was okay with that, because you see, like at the end credits, like the whole movies of them on the boat and stuff, and she's very relaxed and she looks very happy. But I wonder if it's because she genuinely loved Aristotle. Like I always got the impression, and I could be wrong, I should have deep dived more on this, but my interpretation was that she genuinely loved Aristotle. She was willing to leave her first husband for Aristotle. She would have continued to stay with Aristotle. However, he grew tired of her. Maybe she wasn't as popular anymore. So he's now moved on to the next flavor of the month, which became Jackie Kennedy. And plus her pedigree, right? She was the president's wife. She came from this family, distinguished family. So marrying her made more sense than marrying the little fat girl from Athens.
Yeah, who doesn't do anything anymore because I told her not to.
But I still got the impression that Maria really loved Aristotle, because she was sort of...
She must have, if she agreed to not sing anymore.
Right.
I mean, Look how much she loved singing. She loved it to the point that the loss of it made her want to die. And she gave it up for him. And then he just sort of like, okay, well, you were the best. I'm going to get the number one wife, the first lady. Now I have the best wife, another great possession. I have your singing. I have the best wife.
But it felt like he was probably still in communications with Maria.
Probably, yeah.
Because she was there towards the end of his life.
I doubt he's like
faithful to
they made it. They made it seem like it was just sort of, okay, here's another piece of candy, another statue to go with the rest of his little trinkets.
Collection.
I think you're absolutely right. I do think that is what I understood as well about their dynamic. But I think inside I was just hoping maybe that wasn't the case. You know, maybe she had a little bit more of the control of the situation to say no to what appears to be a very narcissistic man.
Yeah. Because I also wondered, like, I feel like it's unfortunate that there wasn't another man there, because maybe that other man could have like pulled her out of, I don't want to say obsession, but sort of this codependency on Aristotle, because she still entertained him. she would take whatever attention crumbs he would throw at her. And I feel like there's a line where she says, I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember it now, even though we just watched it yesterday. But she says something to the effect of like, I didn't continue my relationship with Aristotle because he really wanted to control me and I wasn't about that life. And as far as having a baby, my body just didn't want to have this baby.
Right.
But I feel like, and again, not everyone's cut out to be a mom and not everyone's cut out to be a wife. But I feel like in this particular time period, that's sort of all you knew. So I think she would have wanted to be his wife and she would have wanted to be the mother of his child, but it just didn't work out that way.
And I think maybe that's why her documentarian is a man, because in the end, doesn't she tell him she loves him as well? She said, I love you, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Her documentarian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he disappears, right? At the end, like in the kitchen. So that's why I was like, that was kind of an interesting like story mechanism or device that the documentarian, because he's sort of like, he's there to kind of move the story along. But when she goes, he also disappears because her story is now ended with her death. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things. I mean, the costuming, the set design on this thing is magnificent. I could absolutely see it getting an Oscar. I think Angelina Jolie will probably get an award. I mean, a nomination because she's playing a real life person and they usually... If they don't give it to them, they'll at least nominate them. Like Ange mentioned before, like Renee Zellweger won for the Garland story, which is also, my God, that's probably one of the more depressing Hollywood stories ever. Because as you've said, she was basically kept in a kennel like an animal.
Yeah.
So yeah, the production values on this film are top notch. The costuming is beautiful. The cinematography is great.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I think there should have been a little bit more tweaking of the story. I also would have liked if the story had been presented in a different way. I think this made it a little too depressing. And obviously she died and it was tragic because she was very young and it was probably something that could have been avoided had she had any kind of self-love for herself and stopped her self-destructive behavior. But yeah, I'm going to say if I was going to give this film a 1 to 10, I'm going to give it a 6.5. I think it's better than okay. It's not the best thing I ever saw. I think a lot of the technical aspects of this film kind of bring it higher, but I think that unfortunately, I wish the filmmakers had maybe, I mean, you could have included the end portion of her life, but I would have liked to have seen her when she's shining her brightest. What's going to be your number, 1 to 10?
I'd probably give it a 5.
A 5, just in the middle?
Right in the middle, yeah. I mean, it's, as you mentioned, technically very well done, costuming, all that stuff. I just didn't...
Did you really notice the costuming? Because you don't ever notice that stuff.
No, I do. Especially that time period. I thought everybody dressed very snazzy back then.
Did you?
Yes.
Interesting. Wait, in the 50s, 60s, or when she's in the 70s? Because I know you have no love for the 70s.
The 50s and 60s stuff.
Okay, that's all right. That's what I thought.
Everybody looked quite sharp.
Dapper and sharp, yes.
But as far as like the dialogue, the story, the way the story is told, not really my cup of tea. It was, as you said, very depressing. It focuses mainly like on her last week there or last week alive. There's a couple of flashbacks, but they don't really give a ton of insight, more than maybe a bit of trivia that you might not know about her.
Well, I think the scene with the sister was pivotal.
The scene with the sister. No, the scene with the sister. Okay, there's that.
There's that, but I wish there was
I feel
more
like I feel
that.
that's what I mean. I feel like it's few and far between.
Fair.
There was also some like they kept switching things to like a Super 8. It looked like it was like Super 8 film footage.
Yeah.
That
annoyed me.
That annoyed me as well.
Yeah.
Didn't really see the purpose of that. I saw like, okay, you're splitting things up black and white for the past, present day, and color. Mm. Okay, that makes sense. This third thing with the Super 8 just was like...
Yeah. They could have left it for the end credits where they put her home movies and stuff. That would have been smarter. But yeah, I agree with you.
The story just didn't grab me.
Okay.
So as far as I would say technically great, story-wise, no. And for me, story's always king.
Yes, agreed. Miss Angie, what are you going to say? 1 to 10?
Well, first, I love the word snazzy. I think that's a fun one.
We got to bring that back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should. And I think for me, a lot like the other movies that you and I have talked about, and through you, Ray, as well. My favorite movies are the ones that keep me thinking and wanting to learn more. And this one falls in that category for me because the life lessons of maybe not pursuing perfection, and with the addition of, and also maybe being open to that next chapter. Maybe one thing that you mentioned about being a female in an industry, I do think, at least in the past, men have had an opportunity to sort of redefine their next chapters. Like Robert Redford has amazing foundation as well as retail. And you think only until recently do you see, I think, female characters, actors, and performers being able to do something similar where they get to pivot and decide a new chapter. I think she was probably tragically in a time that wasn't commonplace to be able to say, no, I'm going to completely pivot and do something else. So for me, I'm going to give it a 7 because I like that it made me think a lot about not holding or gripping too tightly to the wheel of perfection and whatever scenario we're in, so that then you can be open to complete imperfection and chaos and things that are new. And the tragedy of it all was terribly sad. I would probably give that a different rating if that were a thing, but it was really sad. But the final singing performance of hers before she passes is beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I think I'd have to give it a 7.
Yeah. Fair. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. That is an excellent life lesson that you could pick up from this. The pursuit of perfection is just
hollow.
It's a dead end. You'll never reach it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I need time, but I wonder how I would feel about this film in like a couple of months.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, I'd be curious, and hopefully we get to see you again in Miss Ange.
I would love that anytime.
Yes. But I'm still gonna say that June Squibb needs to be nominated for Best Actress for Thelma. I'm putting it out there, universe. Although Angelina should also be nominated for Maria. I think she gives a really heartbreaking performance. And I wonder if the actress kind of channels her own personal experiences here, because some of that stuff felt very real and not acted, not scripted. So to Angie's point, not holding on to perfection and I guess being kind to yourself. I think the sister says that, right? She says, be kind to yourself. You weren't to blame for these things. Yeah. I guess that's a goal for 2025. Be kind.
I'm with you.
All right. And so remember to like, share, and subscribe. And we want to thank everybody for stopping by. Again, check out Maria on Netflix. It is rated R for, I don't know what it's rated R for. It wasn't body language in it, was it?
Nah.
I wonder why it's rated R. Drug use. There you go. Mm-hmm. Rated R with a runtime of 2 hours.
I think
and
there's
4
a
minutes.
couple of F words in there.
I mean, a lot.
I think you're only allowed one, and once you go over that, you get the rated R.
You get the R rating. All right, fair enough. All right, again, thank you to the lovely Miss Ange, and with that, we're going to wrap it up, and we're going to bid you all a
good night.
Good night. Oh, say good night, Angie.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, Angie.